Welcome to Flashback Tracks. Travel back in time each Friday to an era of big hair, leg warmers, and Walkmans.
Far out.
Veg out with some clips from Downtime Broadcasting's promotional audio cassette magazine from the 80s and 90s, right here on the World Wide Web.
The Dodd Report by Terry Dodd. Here's our semi-regular report from Terry Dodd. Terry is an industry consultant and a regular writer for Counselor. He's a multi-line representative for Fingraphics, Jameco, J Plastics, The Winning Edge, and Quick Cut.
Here's Terry with a commentary on the ultimate distribution plan for specialty advertising.
Some years ago, when I was a field sales manager for a large direct house, I had a salesman who lived in a small town in West Virginia. And one day, Smitty called asking for my help with something that turned out to be what I call the ultimate distribution plan. Smitty had an account who annually bought 1,000 carefully selected items in the under $1 category. And he related to me that in each of the prior 6 years he had easily met the challenge, but now he had run out of ideas to fit this customer's particular situation. Well, Smitty was the type who didn't volunteer more than what was asked, and half of that had to be coaxed from him, like convincing a puppy to give up a bone. So for starters, I picked what seemed like a simple enough question. Who are these intended recipients, Smitty? And he replied, blue collar, white collar, men, women, children, yuppies, or whatever passed for that category back then. Oh, and retirees. Well, that narrowed it quite a bit. But I pursued my questioning anyway, asking him this time about distribution. Mail, in person, over the counter. And when he replied yes, all three, or sort of, I began to understand why he was asking for help. That is, I understood the need. I had no idea of the problem. So I tried a different approach. Now, Smitty, exactly how are these items used, and for what purpose? Then, a little sheepishly, he informed me that he actually had not one account, but three with similar needs, all tied in with a big annual parade, in which, by the way, he, Smitty, was privileged to ride as an honorary marshal in a top-down convertible, no less. Well, I allowed as how I was happy for him, but pointed out that we weren't making much progress with his problem. So I tried yet another approach, suggesting several specific items for his consideration. I was hoping his reactions might give me a clue. Naturally, he rejected all three, stating that they were either too heavy, had pointed ends, or came with sharp edges, and thus weren't suitable. Completely bewildered, I practically shouted, Smitty, so what? Then it all came unraveled. With a sigh, Smitty said, actually, I'm a little embarrassed about the wonderfulness of this whole thing. You see, he went on to clarify, first of all, I guarantee personal distribution of everything I sell these accounts for this big parade. And I've never failed them. In fact, Smitty finished his oratory, they think I'm a pretty good salesman. Well, I had to reserve judgment on that point, since I didn't understand what was happening here yet. How can you justify the time commitment you spend on this, Smitty? I asked. Now, he looked down and pressed the toe of his shoe against the floor like he was putting out a cigarette butt, and said, that's the embarrassing part. You see, I load all these items into the convertible just before the parade. Now remember, these are items that I sold my customers. Now his eyes began to fairly light as he got to the payoff. So as this convertible moves slowly through the route, I reach into the boxes, I pull out all these imprinted specialties, and then I throw them to the crowd as fast as I can. I call it the ultimate distribution method. Ain't it great? All I could say was, Smitty, it just doesn't get any better than that.
Travel back in time with us next Friday as we share more clips from the 80s and 90s on another rad episode of Flashback Tracks, exclusively on Promo Corner. Time to bounce.